And so what I wanted to do with this training today, with this session, is really to give you an idea as to why these plateaus might happen, and then also what we need to do to obviously get you moving through to seeing that progress again. So, first of all, obviously, super important to understand what a fat loss plateau is. And this really is, or how we define it, is an extended period of time, usually 2 to 4 weeks, where we see no change in body weight, fat loss, or body composition. So this is something that I will kind of show you examples of, and we will kind of go through some of those working examples so you can see what this looks like in reality. We've still got a few more people joining, so I'll keep letting them in. I've also got people messaging me saying they need the link, so give me one more second and we'll crack on. But essentially, a lot of the times we see these or we hear these comments. So my weight is not moving. This always happens in every fat loss journey I've been in. This always happens. I always reach a point where I can't break through. My body is broken. There must be something wrong with me. I'm still doing everything that I was doing before, and I'm still not seeing progress. What's going on? Equally, maybe I'm confused, I'm frustrated, I don't know why I'm not losing weight. Or maybe it's my hormones, maybe it's the medication I'm on, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. So all of these things are perfectly normal to think, right? Because if you've been following the plan, if you've been doing your thing, then you should still be seeing progress. But that doesn't necessarily always happen, and it won't happen. Because a plateau, no matter what pursuit you are in, is a natural part of the process. It is actually a sign, and I think it's really important to reframe this. It's a sign that you've actually been doing everything really well. So it's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's just a point where you have, or it's a kind of a sign that you have reached a point in your journey that what you were doing before is no longer going to be doing the job, right? I think probably every one of you, when we have our first consultation call, right? We start, I give you the kind of idea of where we start now is going to be very different to where we are down the line. And so, with that in mind, you will have to go through this process, leveling up, doing more to achieve what it is you want to achieve. It is natural, it's normal, and everything else. I guess the one thing to say here is, if you are consistent in hitting your targets, your workouts, your steps, your protein, your free meals, your body will naturally adapt to what you're asking it to do. And really, our body does this in everything, in every metabolic process. I'm sure if you cast your mind back to biology class, right, you would probably remember homeostasis. And basically, what that is the body trying to reach balance, trying to reach stability. So if something is high in one area, it's going to do something to bring that down. If something's low, it's going to do something to bring that up. And so the same thing is true when it comes to fat loss, the metabolism, all of these sorts of things play a real important part. And the body, as we'll get onto in a moment, really is very smart, weird, and wonderful, and quite frustrating at times. But I'll touch on that in a few slides' time. So the changes we need to make, nothing really is sexy, unfortunately. And so if you've been doing everything well, you've been hitting your targets that we set you, we may now need to increase the consistency of hitting those things, right? Maybe you're operating at 60, 70, 80% of your targets. Maybe now we need to increase to 80, 90%. As you get closer to your goal, you'll have to tighten things up. You'll have to really sort of focus on dialing things in. That is natural. And, we have to do that as we get closer. Maybe we'll be looking at increasing the frequency or the intensity of your workouts. Maybe we'll be increasing the step target or the protein target, and also making sure we are reducing the number of extras or free meals, or maybe even just reducing the carbohydrates a little. So this is why myself and Marvin, we give you real kind of, what's the word? Encouragement, maybe at times, to make sure that you are highlighting everything within the app. because we get to see what you're doing, and therefore we get to give you a steer, give you an idea as to what it is you need to tweak, focus on, increase, decrease, and we can do it from a place of knowing rather than saying, how much carbohydrate have you had this week? You're never going to be able to answer that. So seeing it visually is really important. And I think a good frame here, and to be honest, this is to everything in life, right? To go somewhere you haven't been before, you need to do something you haven't done before. Okay. So, for yourselves in your sort of your fat loss pursuits, what you're doing now is great, but you will have to now or then do something different, something you haven't necessarily exposed yourself to before, in order to achieve something you haven't achieved before. Perfectly natural, right? Perfectly normal part of the process. So I think it gets lost when it comes to fitness or fat loss, but we need to level things up as we go. And that is why a lot of the time we start with the most minimally overwhelming things for you to do so that we can build those steps for you and take you to somewhere uncharted, somewhere you haven't been before. Because at that point, when we get there, you'll have a new baseline. You'll know now what you need to do and how you can ramp things up within your schedule. So I want to give you kind of a working example here. And this is from one of our clients called Mia, and she had a sort of a 5 month journey. She's still going on with this, but I wanted to pick out this date in particular. So, over this time, she lost 11 kilos, she lost 11% body fat, she gained, 1.5 kilos of muscle mass. And so, what I want to draw our attention to is like, this is quite a good looking graph, right? It's nice, it's steady, it's sustainable. Like, would be happy if we achieve this. But I wanted to zoom into one particular point because this is over a 5 month period. And so for 3 weeks, she was at 70 kilos. She was stuck at 70 kilos for 3 weeks, and she really also, sorry, I think it was like 68 kilos, forgive me. 68 kilos for 3 weeks. And as you could imagine, if you are doing everything that you were doing before, right? If you were doing everything that you were doing before and it's no longer necessarily working, then you might get frustrated. You might get upset. You might think, this always happens. Fuck this. I'm over it. Nothing's changing. I need to change something. I need to change plan. I need to do something else. However, at this point, what we did was understood what was happening with Mia. And we could see through her data where she was doing well and where needed some improvement. To be honest, she was smashing everything. So it wasn't necessarily a case of, okay, you've got to do more of what you're doing, but it's a case of, okay, how can we dial things up? And for her, literally all we did was removed, say, half a serving of carbohydrate a day, right? Half a serving. And then that was enough to get the downward trajectory going again, and then again, and again. And then, at this point, she was 4 kilos down versus what she was when she was at a plateau. So I think a lot of the time, and which is really important when you have your accountability, your report, myself and Marvin share with you, is you will see the week by week. That is really important. That shows you the trend in terms of your behaviors, your weights, your in body, whatever it might be. And so it's super important for you to reflect on that and for you to see maybe what has been going up, maybe what has been going down, and to be able to piece that together with us so that we can, if we are at a genuine plateau, can tweak things. If we're not at a plateau and it's a case of maybe you've dropped off in one area, then we can double down our efforts in that area and get you moving. Now, another example, a guy called Aziz. This is his 6 month journey. And he was very sort of thrilled. Sort of he wanted to share these pictures because of what he had experienced in his time. And so this is 6 months worth of journey, right? So he's down what, 12 kilos? And with this, in this journey in particular, he hit like 5 different plateaus, varying from a week or 2 weeks, maybe even one at 3 weeks. And so if you look at this, you would see, great, before, after, he's had a fantastic job. But throughout the process, there has been ups, there has been downs, there have been times when he's wanted to give up because he always gets to that point and fuck it, he's there again. He can't get over it, he can't get through it. However, this is where then we had to tweak things. We had to evolve things. And just because you hit a plateau, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. If anything, it means you have to double down your efforts to then bust through that plateau. As I mentioned at the beginning, in order to go somewhere you haven't been before, you need to do things you haven't done before. So the first time, the first encounter of hardship or difficulty, you want to give up. You want to be like, this isn't for me. But if you double down your efforts, you will see that continued change. So I just wanted to share these two examples as a bit of a frame for you if you are to reach a similar point. Now, what is the one thing that we need for fat loss? We did a resource on this, a training on this the other day. And no doubt all of you have the the words on the tip of your tongue. It is the calorie deficit, right? The calorie deficit is the thing we need in order to lose fat. It's as simple as that. Simple, not easy. So just to remind you, maybe you haven't seen this training, maybe you weren't present for it. Our body burns calories in different ways, right? So one sort of way it burns it is through the general metabolism, the BMR. So if you were to do nothing all day, if you had a Netflix binge on the sofa all day, your body would burn a certain amount of calories. Okay, that's a big chunk. And so if then you're eating food, your body would then use calories to break down that food. Now, the green area is our movement. It's going up and down the stairs, getting up and down from the sofa, going to the printer at work, walking up the stairs, going to and from the car, that kind of stuff. And so that is quite a sizable amount of calories that our body burns. And that's why we get you to focus on the steps, because there's huge benefit to that. And then as a reminder, the training, the exercise, the cardio, the intensity, that in the grand scheme of things each day is quite small, a piece of the calorie pie, as it were. Now, all of these calorie expenditures add up, right? So in order to lose fat, we need to be burning more calories than we are eating, right? So if we have that level where you're burning more than you're eating, your body will take that deficit and use it and break down body fat for energy. That's where we want to be. And so that is why it's really important for us to be looking at your food, your training, your movement, all of that stuff. As we mentioned before, even the best workouts, the healthy eating won't lead to fat loss unless you are in this deficit. Now, generally what we find is as you get into your journey, your body adapts to this lower calorie intake and it actually slows your metabolism down, meaning your body will burn fewer calories at rest. So again, what worked before may no longer create that calorie deficit that we have. And so whilst we all have this goal to lose body fat, to get in shape, to build muscle mass, our body's goal is just to stay alive. So obviously using body fat as fuel is not a good thing, right? It doesn't want to do it. It means it's not getting enough food in to maintain where it's at. And so it plays various different tricks on us to make us eat more, move less. And what we then find is if we were at this sort of deficit before, right, where we were roughly burning 2,000 calories and eating 1,800 calories, don't worry about the numbers. It's just an example. Then we have this 200 calorie deficit. So our body on a daily basis will burn or break down body fat of 200 calories to get that energy it needs to perform all of these different functions, right? To keep us alive. Now, if, for example, you now weigh 8 kilos less, there's less mass of you. So your body needs less calories. And so maybe you're now eating a little less food as well. Therefore, the amount of energy expended to break down that food is not as high. Equally, maybe because you aren't eating as much food and you're experiencing a bit of diet fatigue, maybe you're just, and it's hot maybe outside, you're moving less. So your steps decrease. You're sitting down more. So what was once 2,000 calories, you've now you burn less at rest, you eat less food, you're moving less. So that number of calorie expenditure has decreased. So what was before a deficit now has evened out. So now you're at maintenance and now you've hit that plateau. Okay. So that's the important thing to be aware of. And so I want to touch on now 8 reasons why you might hit that plateau. And, another way to phrase this is 8 reasons why you may no longer be in a calorie deficit. Okay. So really important. Obviously, pipe up if you've got questions or comments, and keep your questions to the end as well, and I'll kind of run through them in the chat. Now, we have to fight against all of this, basically. We've got all of the physiological sort of adaptations and reasons that make fat loss harder. As I said, metabolic adaptation. Your body's going to slow down its metabolism. Maybe it's hormones. Maybe it's the quality of sleep that is messing with your sleep cycle. Maybe it's simply genetics and the set point you have in your body weight. Maybe it's the amount of muscle mass you have and the amount of calories your body burns through muscle mass. Maybe it's hydration. Maybe it's metabolic disorders. Maybe it's things like PCOS. Maybe it's the medication that you're taking. Maybe also it's the psychological side. Maybe your willpower is suffering. Maybe you've got this diet fatigue because you've been dieting for 6 months and khalas, you're over it, you're finished, you don't want to do it anymore. Maybe it's these unrealistic expectations or scale obsession, or even the coping mechanisms or habits that you have developed over the years, right? These cravings, previous experiences, as we mentioned at the beginning, maybe you reach a point when you're just like, okay, I just can't lose any more weight. I'm stuck, finished. Maybe it's the confidence, maybe it's the self-efficacy, the belief that you have in yourself. So all of these things come together, some physiological, some psychological, and then obviously make when you hit a plateau a tough experience, right? Very tough experience. And also, to be honest, all of these things affect how you perform in the rest of your journey, when you start, when you finish, all that kind of stuff. So one of the biggest ones we see, and this is where we sometimes get radio silence from some clients, right? So there may be one mistake. That one mistake then turns into two, then turns into three. And I think the important thing that I want you to know here is the first mistake or the first instance or occurrence, or maybe you went over on your free meal, maybe you had 2 free meals a week, maybe you accidentally had, I don't know, a full sugar Coke instead of a Diet Coke, that kind of thing, right? This one mistake, or maybe you missed a gym session. So that one thing isn't the thing that kills you. It is the thinking of, fuck it. Like I've just messed this up. I've just missed the workout. And then it's that spiral of repeated mistakes that gets you. So the way I want you to think about this is life obviously happens, right? There will be mistakes. There will be things that come up. But missing once is an accident, right? It's okay. We can come back. But missing twice is the start of a new habit. And for me, I kind of have this sort of at home, and I bought this exercise bike, and I was like, okay, 3 times a week, 30 minutes in the morning, get on it and do my thing, etc. And then maybe I travel for a weekend. I miss one time. The following week, when I come back, I miss again and I miss again. And then khalas, that habit is finished. That habit is gone. Now need to start creating a new habit, start over again. And so just like you see here, it's okay if you miss once. That happens. Life happens. We're thinking about bigger picture. But do not ever miss twice, because that is when you kind of start that new habit of whatever that might be. Now, the weekend is something that can really throw a lot of people. It is what, 2/7 of the week, which is about just under 30% of the time, if my maths is correct. And so I've shown these charts before, and I think it's really important, again, to be reminded of this. This may not be the weekend. This may just be one day in the week or another day in the week. Ultimately, what we're saying is 2 days a week, 2/7 of the week. And what we have here is people lose the routine maybe at the weekend. People don't have their meal subscription. People are going out to eat more. People are doing different things. And so what happens is you may be killing it during the week. You may be hitting your targets. You may be doing your thing. However, when the weekend comes, you splurge. You maybe binge. You maybe have too much. And what we see is this up and down over here. So you're losing weight well during the week. Then you're gaining for those 2 days because you've had such a surplus of calories. Then you're doing well during the week. Same thing happens. It goes all the way back up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Now, this yo-yo, it's on a weekly basis, is something that, again, can be quite disheartening, right? Because if you don't know what is going on, you're like, fuck, I'm like, it's 2 months in and I'm still 124 kilos. What's going on? However, once we kind of understand this, and again, this is why the sort of the tracking is so important because we can see these patterns. Once we understand it, once we're aware of it, we can then change. And so for this gentleman here, Abdul Rahman, it was about introducing or making sure it was one free meal only. That can be whatever he wants. It can be a whole pizza. It can be a tub of Magnum ice cream. It can be all of these different things. But we need to make sure it's not a free day or a free weekend. And so a lot of the time, we want to reward ourselves, or it's a tough week, or we're going out with friends, but the onus is on us. We are the one who is 100% responsible and is 100% in control of what goes in our mouths. And so it's important to make sure that the occasion you have your free meal in is a good one. You're not wasting it. So make sure it counts. Use it wisely. Now, also, I want you to think big picture. This is a journey of months and years, not days and weeks. So again, we had Hani here, and what we found with him is, as you can see, this is over what, a 10-month period, I think. 10 months, 10 months. And so again, if we zoomed into one of these weeks or 2-week periods, when you see these spikes, man, I think it would be mad depressing at that time. And yes, we struggled with really sort of locking in and getting those targets hit. But over the big picture, you forget those small blips because what? Now he's 14% body fat, 14% weight down versus what he was initially. So again, like I really encourage you to think big picture when it comes to your fitness journey. And that is why when I share your journey with you, we have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, because you're not permanently for the rest of your life going to be in a fat loss phase. And I touch on a little bit later on as to what are some of the phases we can go through to actually continue the fat loss as well. Another one, is it a true plateau or are we still seeing body composition changes? So what other measures can we use to assess progress? What are the other non-scale victories that we can look at? And obviously, another measurement one is the InBody. Muscle mass, body fat, we do that on a monthly basis. Progress pictures are a good one. As you saw with Aziz, which we had earlier on, he was taking those every 2 to 3 weeks to keep himself accountable, to keep himself doing his thing. Obviously, you don't need to share them with myself and Marvin, but for you to be able to compare them side by side is it's either sort of a celebration or it is a reality check that sometimes we need that. You can also look at tape measurements, how your clothes are fitting. Maybe you're dipping into the cupboard you haven't opened in a couple years. Your performance, your strength improvements in the gym, or even compliments from other people. So all of these things are those non-scale victories that even if your weight is staying the same, there may be big shifts in body composition. And one of the things which I think is important to these journeys is how we start with a boost of motivation, right? We're excited, like this is something new, we're going to kill it this time. we can get out of bed early for a week or two, and then, we start to drop off. Maybe we get a bit complacent. Maybe we become a little loose. And so what we found with this lady here, Sarah, is she started strong, has never failed in terms of hitting her sessions, right? Killing her sessions, 100% consistency. Again, step target, doing pretty well, doing like reasonably well, working at about 60% of the target there. Protein, looking good. She's hitting her target, sometimes going over in her targets. Vegetables, fruits, doing well, a little bit of room for improvement. But we found at around week 4, week 5, the weight started to not shift. There were no changes in body weight. And what we then saw was the meals off plan. So maybe instead of just one free meal a week, she was going for 2, maybe 3. Maybe there were social occasions. Maybe there was this. And there was. Her brothers were in town. And so she wanted to spend time with them, which is perfectly fine. But we need to be aware that, again, like the body's not broken. Things just aren't working anymore. No, nothing like that. It's simple. You were previously in a calorie deficit doing these behaviors, and now you've taken yourself out of the calorie deficit. So once we have sort of seen this, we've kind of adjusted things and now are making good progress again. So really important for, again, to look at these charts and see what's going well, where you're hitting your targets, and where we may need to improve. Now, maybe we aren't aware of our actions. And so that we had a lady join, and from her, she was saying, I just haven't been able to lose weight in 2 years. And so we did the food journal, of course. We love a food journal. And what we found was quite enlightening, right? Things creep in. A croissant one morning, a couple glasses of orange juice one day, a late night snack. So all of these things creep in. And because even though she may be eating healthy, she may be hitting her protein, all of these small little things add up over time. And they take you again from being in a calorie deficit to now being at maintenance or even gaining weight, being in a surplus. So just like in the previous slide where we were talking about, not getting complacent, being aware of the things that we are doing is equally important. And, portion sizes may creep up. I remember, when I was in sort of my last, but to be honest, whenever I'm in a kind of cutting phase or a fat loss phase, when it comes to my evening meal, I've got one of those small, like half cup things of rice, right? And, it would come, I'd start my fat loss phase with 2 cups of those rice. And then as I wanted to adjust and move out some carbohydrate, it'll be 1.5, right? And then it comes to like 1. And I'm just like, the first one, it wasn't quite full. So I'll kind of fill up the next one. And so these small things, these justifications or these rationales that you have, they add up, they creep up. Maybe your protein starts to drop. This is another funny one we looked at as well recently. Parents seem to love finishing off their kids' food. Not sure if that's the same for anyone with kids here, but that is another sort of increase in calories that we can see through the day, which is not really planned or conscious. Another one I had it with a client here as well. The maid, I remember him being like, I am 100% sticking to the plan, 100%. And then one day he was checking what the maid was doing with the food. And let's just say she was being quite generous with the cooking oil. And so again, like this is something he wasn't aware of. He was thinking he was on it. But this little thing, this extra, I don't know, half a liter of cooking oil or whatever it was, boosted him from calorie deficit to maintenance and even surplus on some days. Liquid calories are a thing, especially when we're not aware of them. And this is an interesting one. When you are starting to live this healthier, more active lifestyle, you start to eat more health foods, right? You start to like choose foods which, I don't know, may have more greenery in them, more veg, more protein, more this. And you're thinking, yes, this is health food. I'm on it. It's great. However, health foods can often be full of all sorts of other things as well. So just be mindful of that. Just because it's healthy, just because it's no sugar, just because it's whatever, it doesn't mean it doesn't sort of include extras. Maybe you're eating out more often, maybe you're grazing more, maybe you have that friend saying, it's just one bite, just one bite. One bite isn't going to do anything. These things add up. Free meal turning into a free day. Now, another thing I want to make you aware of, which is why things like strength training and your protein intake are so important, is that if you lose muscle mass in this journey, your body fat percentage is going to increase, and therefore you are going to burn fewer calories at rest. And so losing muscle mass is probably like the worst thing that we can do in this journey. And so that is why it is so, so, so important to focus on getting your protein in and hitting your strength training sessions. Because as we found with this lady, the body fat percentage wasn't really going down that much, but she was losing body fat for sure, but her muscle mass was being lost as well. And so really important to make sure that these things are taken care of. As you can see with her strength training, she started strong, motivation was high, and then things happen that got her down to 1 session a week, 2 sessions a week, etc. So that is where then there's not enough stimulus for the body to hold on to the muscle mass, right? That's the purpose of strength training when you are in a fat loss phase, for the body to hold on to the muscle mass and even build it at times. And then you can see here as well, started strong reasonably with the nutrition, with the protein, and then started to tail off and literally getting 55% of target on most days. Context is important as well. So are there lifestyle changes to consider? So this is one, that is probably a bit of a silent killer when it comes to fat loss. Sleep deprivation, poor quality of sleep, the physical, emotional stress. Maybe you're moving less within your day. Maybe you're stuck in workshops all week and your steps go down. Maybe there's illness. What these things do is they kind of disrupt our behavior, right? Maybe they will send an increase in hunger signals to us. Your cravings go through the roof. Maybe it's poor recovery. Maybe there's, with the stress, water retention, inflammation. Your sort of body weight goes up because of that water retention, or hormonal changes when it's your period. Maybe there's a suboptimal metabolic process impairing fat loss. So these things can affect, lipolysis, for example. So the fat breakdown process is interrupted or less efficient when you are highly stressed, you have poor sleep. And so I know sleep is probably the number one killer when it comes to consistency and willpower, motivation, discipline. So how we can break the plateau, as you would have expected. Nothing really, there's no sexy answers here. There's nothing here which is going to be like, that's the magic bullet. That is the secret. Oh, but I think the secret is adding a U to the focus. But anyway, at these times, it's really important to reflect and refocus, right? So there's two things that you can ask yourself. And to be honest, this can be used for anything in life, any pursuit. First of all, am I doing everything in my power to achieve this goal? 9 times out of 10, we're not, right? We get a little loose, we get complacent, we don't do the things that we're meant to do. And so, are you doing everything in your power to achieve this goal? And are the problems you're facing actual, real, unmanageable problems, unsolvable problems? Maybe at times, but most likely not. Second one, how could I guarantee I fail at this? So if you turn this on its head, and I were to ask you, how could you guarantee you would fail at this fat loss journey? I'm sure you could be like, I wouldn't go to the gym, I wouldn't hit my protein, I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do this, I would do this, I would do that. And so often, if we kind of flip it on its head, it's important it gives us an extra bit of insight. So in one of my check-ins the other day, I asked around or I kind of shared the story about my Arabic, right? And over the last couple months, like two months ago, I was hitting a point where it's like I'm really not improving. I'm feeling stuck. I've hit a plateau, right? I've hit a plateau in this, and I really don't fucking like it. Um, because I find if I try and relate my fitness stories to you, they're less relevant. But as you would have seen, I am kind of fumbling my way through Arabic. And I think there's lots of learnings in there when it comes to that beginner mindset and mentality. And so, I'd ask myself these questions like, am I doing everything in my power to achieve this goal? Absolutely not. Not in the slightest. My classes each week went down from 3 to 1. Would I prepare for my class that I did have? No, I wouldn't look at my homework. I wouldn't practice with people in public because I felt awkward or uncomfortable or I was tired or moody or whatever. And so, am I doing everything in my power to get better at Arabic? Absolutely not. How could I guarantee I would fail at this? Well, I would stop my classes. I would stop doing homework. I would stop X, Y, and Z. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning, when you kind of reach this point where it's like I can stop, I can give up, I can sort of say it wasn't for me, or I can double down my efforts and like go all in. And I think that is the thing to consider for yourselves here is when you reach a point, again, with anything in life where you're not seeing the progress that you expect or that you want, you have two choices. You can park it, you can give up, come back to it later, or you can literally go all in and double down your efforts, commit, sacrifice, and see where that gets you. Because I guarantee it'll get you so much farther than you would have expected. So I hope you like those two frames. Again, I use them for a lot of things. And then also it's time to ramp things up. As I mentioned, doubling down your efforts. So ramping up that consistency, increasing the frequency or intensity of your workouts. Are you just going through the motions with your workouts, going in the gym, doing the same weights you were doing before? Or are you going to fucking like move, fucking beast it? Your daily step targets, can you increase those? How can you do it? How can you be more intentional with that? How can you hit your protein target? How can you boost that up? How can you be more consistent with that? Because there's always problems, there's always trade-offs, right? And to be honest, like another thing to consider, like there are no solutions to any of this. There's literally just sacrifice and trade-off. So for you to get your daily step targets or for you to go to bed earlier, you are going to have to trade something off. Maybe that'll be instead of watching 3 episodes of whatever on Netflix, you can only watch one. Or maybe you can't watch any, but you can save it for the weekend. There's always these trade-offs. And it's thinking, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the result, is the thing that you want worth it? And I probably guarantee for all of you, it absolutely is. Can we reduce those extras, those free meals? Can we start reducing those carbohydrate servings? Now, here's an interesting one as well, just in relation to the reverse diet. So, as I mentioned, your journey is a big one, right? Fitness isn't a 3 month plan. It is like what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. You'll go through phases, you'll go through periods, etc. So dieting permanently, so non-stop dieting can be very stressful to the body, right? Cortisol is high, you're not getting enough calories in, etc. Diet fatigue can also do more harm than good. And then also, you can be running on empty for too long. So you're not getting enough, you're not getting abundance in of nutrients, of vitamins, of minerals. And so taking a big picture view is often something we encourage at this point. Maybe you've hit a plateau and you've seen fantastic fat loss, but maybe now you're at a point where actually, instead of like pursuing this fat loss phase and seeing diminishing returns, i.e., it's diet fatigue, it's doing more harm than good. Maybe you're starting to lose some muscle mass. Maybe we actually flip you into a muscle gain phase where we give you more food, more abundance, more fuel so that you can build more muscle mass. You're enjoying it because you're well fed, you're increasing your strength, you're performing well, you're not lethargic as you go through the day. You build more muscle mass, and then after 2, 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it is, we then bring you back into your fat loss phase. Because at that point, I guarantee you'll be eating more than you were before, you'll have more muscle mass, and you'll be losing at a higher rate than you would have before. So again, it's taking that long, like big picture view of this journey of yours, which to be honest is never ending, and It's then thinking, what can I do at this time to maximize my results? So, man, I can't wait for Marvin to come back because I'm sure you're probably bored of my voice. I'm bored of my voice. So I hope that makes sense. And I'll obviously share this with you again if you want to relook at it. But are there any questions? Are there any comments?